Well, new this morning, a man is behind bars after Albuquerque police say he tried to steal an ATM with a stolen front end loader. Now, it all happened late last night near 98th and Central. APD says Tommy Burks smashed the ATM, then scooped it up into the bucket of the loader. They say when he tried to take off with it, he rammed into a nearby building, then drove off. Police eventually caught up to Burks. They say the loader he was using was stolen from a construction site in town. He's charged with unlawful taking of a motor vehicle. A grand jury has indicted the 6 teens accused of killing an Albuquerque bartender. Police say they murdered Stephen Garrick in his own driveway last month. The jury also indicted them on attempted murder charges for shooting at another robbery victim and charges connected to 10 different incidents that night, mostly burglaries. The 15-year-old, 2 16-year-olds, and 17-year-old are all being treated as adults. One of the 14-year-olds, his grandmother, is still in jail this morning. She faced a judge yesterday accused of threatening to kill a neighbor with a butcher knife. She allegedly thought he snitched on her grandson. A judge set Carla Palomino's bond at $50,000 cash or surety. She and her husband are Enrique Palomino's grandparents, one of the boys accused of murdering the local bartender. The two have a history of drugs and assault. Well, new this morning, police in Raton are searching for a suspect in a deadly shooting that happened Friday afternoon. Police say it all happened at an apartment on the 1200 block of State Street. They say that's where they found 33-year-old Jacob D. Salas bleeding heavily from gunshot wounds to his leg and groin. He was rushed to a nearby hospital where he died. Police are now looking for 19-year-old Flavio Rodriguez in connection with the shooting. Rodriguez is facing multiple charges, including murder. Well, in the past, SWAT calls for APD sometimes ended with the suspect shot and killed. But so far this year, despite a surge in SWAT calls, not a single life has been taken. So what's changed? News 13's Gabrielle Burkhart tells you what they're doing differently.
Albuquerque has seen its share of deadly standoffs with police SWAT teams. There were 39 SWAT calls last year and 3 deaths with SWAT involved. But 7 months into 2015, with nearly the same amount of calls as all of last year, APD says all of their SWAT standoffs have ended without a death.
There's several things that we're doing that have changed. We put a greater focus on our crisis negotiation team.
Deputy Chief William Roseman says since the Department of Justice settlement agreement to reform APD, SWAT teams are doing weekly scenario-based training. They've also ramped up resources, but he also points to the suspects themselves.
When tactical is activated, there's certain things that we can control, but the one thing that we can't control is going to be the subject's behavior and his determination or hers of whether or not they're going to end this peacefully or not.
Last month, a 6-hour SWAT standoff ended peacefully with a man who told police he wanted to be shot. According to APD, from 2010 to 2013, there were more than 50 calls a year. That number dipped to 39 last year. This year, police say they've already had almost the same amount at 33 SWAT calls. Still, APD says that can be good for everyone.
Because of the resources you're bringing to the table, because one of these calls, if it was handled by the field services, it's going to drain all of the resources. Calls are going to start stacking. They don't have the resources available to actually handle the situation if it starts to escalate.
This is a good sign, but this reform process is going to take as many as 4 years.
Peter Simonson of the ACLU says a national study by the ACLU shows SWAT is often overused.
I think we can be cautiously optimistic, but certainly not assume that the problems have all been resolved.
Gabrielle Burkhart, KRQE News 13.
APD says they're also putting more accountability on the crisis negotiation team during SWAT calls by adding a lieutenant to help oversee the call. The ACLU says they'll wait to see how things have changed when the first report from the Federal Monitor, which should come out later this year. Well, deputies say they now have the right killer in the murder of a C&M student after arresting the wrong man. Jared Clark was shot and killed in the South Valley last month. BCSO arrested Carlos Escudero after an informant pinned the murder on him. But deputies figured out the informant was lying. They then went after 20-year-old Emilio Marquez. Yesterday, a judge set his bond at $250,000 cash only. He's accused of selling drugs to Clark, killing him and stealing his car. The informant is charged with tampering with evidence. A Taos County man won't be going to jail for his treasure trove of stolen antiques. John Aliama was arrested last year when a victim recognized their stolen property at an art show. Investigators then searched Liama's home and seized about 200 stolen items, including a coyote pelt, a machete, antique silverware, and Native American bowls. Prosecutors say his collection was worth more than $20,000. Aliama was sentenced to 5 years probation and will have to compensate the victims. The state health department is looking into whether a New Mexico woman died from plague. The 52-year-old woman lives in Santa Fe County. Now, if tests confirm plague, it would be the first human case in New Mexico so far this year. A race to the rescue. Officers in northern Illinois arrived at a burning home just ahead of firefighters and just in time. Take a look at this dramatic dash cam video. You can see 2 officers trying to rescue a man in a wheelchair from inside the home. One officer pulls the squad car closer so the others had something to stand on. They guided the man by voice commands and pulled him through the window.
I'd say this is what we're trained to do, and I would say, yes, it was lucky the way it played out that we got there at the time that we did, seeing the smoke coming from the house, and that we were able to pull him to safety.
Investigators say the fire started when a light bulb exploded. The man the officer saved is expected to make a full recovery. Well, new this morning, we're learning more about the deadly theater shooting in Louisiana. Police say the suspect had a troubled past. Meanwhile, 2 of the victims are being praised for their heroic actions during the attack. Kyung La brings us that part of the story.
Chaos, basically.
Unfolding inside the movie theater, where high school teachers Gina Mo and Allie Martin were celebrating a last girls' night out before the start of school.
Wow, they took their training and put it into action even outside of the classroom.
They're training as teachers, says friend and coworker Cami Maturin, but training you don't expect to use while watching a movie.
One teacher jumped in front of her friend, potentially saving her life. The second teacher said that bullet was coming for her head, or for her friend hadn't jumped on top of her. Both teachers were injured. The second teacher was injured in the leg.
Both shot, bleeding, yet somehow the friends who saved each other then thought of the 100 others in the theater. Officials say Martin headed to a fire alarm.
Had presence of mind to pull those fire alarm to alert individuals what was going inside that theater.
So who knows how many lives she saved by doing that.
People inside ran out, then began helping the wounded. First responders, tipped off early by that fire alarm, flooded the theater. And now all too familiar image of grief and shock, a moment these teachers had prepared for at Jeanneret Senior High School. The teachers met 7 years ago. Best friends, Gina Mo, the school's librarian, Allie Martin, an English teacher. On Facebook, their students wrote about their bravery and courage, their pride in an act that likely saved many lives. But they seemed unsurprised, because after all, this is what their teachers do.
Keep others alive. How can we help others get to safety? How can we help our kids get to safety in the classroom? That's what these ladies were trained to do, and they did it in just a blink of an eye.
Police say the suspect had a history of mental illness. An Albuquerque woman has filed a claim against the water authority after a sinkhole swallowed her SUV. A source tells us the claim that Lynn Parsons filed may also mention she is now suffering PTSD, which could mean a lawsuit is on the way. Now, the water authority got a call Saturday afternoon about a leak near Indian School and America's Parkway. According to the technician who showed up within minutes, Parsons' SUV fell into the sinkhole after he arrived. Now, officials don't know whether the worker blocked the path to the sinkhole or not.
Well, our insurance investigator is undertaking an investigation of it, and we'll make a decision based on that investigation whether to dispute the claim or not.
The sinkhole was caused by a water line break. It has since been repaired. Well, the investigation continues this morning after an explosion at a medical marijuana dispensary in Santa Fe that left 2 people hurt. It happened at the New Mexican Natural Medicine on Thursday. 29-year-old Nicholas Montoya is in critical condition, and 28-year-old Aaron Smith is listed as stable. Well, a close call after a mountain biker was stabbed through the neck with a tree branch. We warn you, the picture may be hard to look at. The man was biking near Albuquerque when he fell off his bike. That's when the branch went through his neck. Now, after the crash, he drove 20 miles to UNMH with the branch still in his neck. Doctors say the tree limb could have caused a serious injury if it had hit a major blood vessel, nerve, or the patient's airway. But the CT scan showed no major injury. Surgeons took the branch out and closed the wound. Well, Roswell police have named 2 suspects in connection to the murder of a teen. 19-year-old Dominic Finch was shot outside a home in the east part of the city on Wednesday. Police are now looking for 39-year-old Stephen Johnson and 38-year-old Jennifer Purcella. The 2 may be traveling in a gray Dodge Charger. Police have arrested a woman for murdering another in Alamogordo. Officers found 28-year-old Erica Castillo shot to death at a home on Dexter Lane. Police arrested Castillo's roommate, 27-year-old Lydia Mendez. Police tell the Daily News the shooting stemmed from some sort of argument between the 2, but the investigation is ongoing. Police in Tularosa are trying to find the vandals responsible for doing this to one of their patrol cars. Words like corrupt, profit police, and slave were painted all over the car this week.
The vandals put some hurtful words targeting the department or law enforcement in general on that car.
The unit was sitting in an open parking lot outside a local body shop, so it wasn't too tough for the vandal to get to it. Police don't have any suspects. A now former Tucumcari police officer and another man have pleaded guilty to setting abandoned buildings on fire. Back in September, Dustin Lopez and his co-defendant Robert Sandoval set an abandoned home on fire. When fire crews were working the blaze, the 2 went to a vacant motel and burned it to the ground. Lopez and Sandoval accepted a plea deal, and each will serve 5 years. Lopez later resigned as an officer. A former Rio Rancho High School janitor has pleaded guilty to raping young girls. Police say Gary Brasino raped 3 female family members. 1 girl was as young as 6. Police say at least one of those rapes happened at the high school, but it did not involve a student. Rio Rancho schools fired Brasino the day he was indicted. He was immediately sentenced to 13 years in prison and must register as a sex offender. Well, caught on camera, police officers, firefighters, and bystanders lifted a car off a woman with their bare hands. Surveillance video captured the crash earlier this month. You can see the moment the car and the woman on the motorcycle collide. She gets trapped under the car. Officers first try to jack, but when that didn't work, they used their hands.
All we saw was like an arm and the rest of her, so we tried to make sure that, she was still alive, still breathing, something, until DFR got there.
The woman is recovering at home.